Good evening and welcome to the January 12th regular meeting for Council. We are starting the meeting at 6:04 p.m. and if you're watching at home, you can obviously tell that we have switched to Zoom. We'll be talking about a couple of meeting dates in the future that we'll be looking at. So call the meeting to order, and at this time I'm looking to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors? Not seeing anything. Anything from administration?
Your Worship.
Yes.
Can we just get a motion to reschedule today's meeting to be held virtually?
Right. So Council, when we're confirming this agenda, I'm just before that, actually, I need a motion to reschedule this meeting so that it's going to be officially discussed and shown to be held virtually. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I would move that exact motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to schedule or to reschedule this meeting as a virtual one. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And then at this time, I'm looking for the confirmation of the agenda, but we're looking to amend the agenda to add item 8.2, which will be discussing the rescheduling of January 19th and 26th meetings to be virtual. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. I will move that Council adopt the January 12th, 2022 regular Council meeting agenda as amended to include 8.2, rescheduling of the January 19th, 2022 regular Council meeting and January 26th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you for that. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We have no presentations or recognitions tonight. We have no delegations or consent agenda. So that brings us to 6, confirmation of minutes, 6.1, special council meeting minutes for December 8th, 2021. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that Council adopt the December 8th, 2021 special council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. That brings us to item 6.2. Oh, you can hear people racing on the street. 6.2, regular council meeting minutes for December 15th, 2021. Councillor Langmaid.
I'll move that Council adopt the December 15th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for the motion. And now that it's on the floor, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no tabled items and we move on to item 8. Items or reports from administration. 8.1, Lakeside Boulevard and Archie Kleiber Trail intersection upgrade. Ethan Wilson is going to be presenting, and just as a reminder, Council, I'll ask you to hold off any questions until the presentation is over because I won't be able to see your hand icons if you do ask questions, if you were to ask questions. Ethan, Happy New Year and welcome tonight.
Thank you, your Mayor and Council. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Lakeside Boulevard and Archie Kleiber Trail is an important intersection in the town of Strathmore. It's the entrance into town for many residents. It's the primary access to Kinsman Park, Town Hall, and for many, the access to downtown. Today, this intersection is surrounded by 4 main locations. We've got a school in the northwest, a car wash, commercial business, and fire hall in the northeast, a card lock to the southwest, and a motel to the southeast. Recent development applications have been submitted that are likely to drastically change this area of town. Development permit 21-044 Strath Point was submitted and approved earlier in 2021, which sees the demolition of the former Leroy's Motel and develops into a multi-building development, which is anticipated to house commercial, fast food, and a gas bar. In addition to this, recently we've got development permit 21-149, which is for a subway addition to the existing car wash to add a restaurant to this space. With these new developments, primarily the Strath Point development, it was noted through a transportation impact assessment that the current four-way stop intersection will not be sufficient, and is likely to provide an unacceptable level of service. Some options to remediate these are what my presentation today is on. Option 1 is a signalized intersection. This change does not see a significant adjustment to the intersection, but mostly is an upgrade of the current four-way stop signals or signs with traffic signals. When we look a little bit closer at this option, a northbound to eastbound slip lane is added for reduced wait times, and sidewalks with pedestrian crossings are added at 3 out of the 4 corners. The second option is a single lane roundabout, which would be a significant change to this intersection and also to the drivers of Strathmore. Strathmore currently only has 1 roundabout and is in a relatively quiet intersection in the residential neighborhood of Wildflower Ranch. Some of the finer details of this option is that it also has the northbound to eastbound slip lane. It has pedestrian crossings at all 4 corners, and it has the space available to have sidewalks in all directions leading away from this intersection. The driving lane width is also a little bit wider, as the total number of lanes can be reduced to do the unique traffic movements of a roundabout. When we compare these 2 projects, we can see that the costs are very similar. The lane widths are very similar, and both can accommodate semi-trucks and emergency vehicles. Some small differences are the pedestrian crossings are better with the roundabout, as well as an annual signal maintenance fee is not required with the roundabout. With all these items being very comparable, the main item of discussion then becomes the lifespan, traffic safety, and the environmental impact. Funding of this project will be paid for with a combination of offsite levies as well as other funding sources. Levies will cover $263,000 at either option, and the remaining balance could be funded through grants, through an agreement with the developer, or through borrowing. Should borrowing be the ultimate direction, which is chosen, the annual payments and total cost of borrowing are shown here. The lifespan of each project is where we can see some differences in the 2 projects. The deep utility upgrades that are required in the area must be done before a roundabout can be constructed to ensure that unnecessary remediation costs are not spent in the future. It would likely be recommended that the deep utilities also be completed prior to the signalized intersection to minimize the disruptions to traffic after opening day, but the construction of a signalized intersection is not something that would govern this. When we look 10 to 20 years out, we can see that the level of service with the roundabout begins to be reduced as time progresses and ultimately reaches a time where it would be recommended to upgrade the roundabout to maintain its level of service. The south and westbound lanes are where we see the delays occurring with the roundabout, but northbound and eastbound, which are the primary traffic movements, would still be at a level of service of A and B. An upgrade would either require the acquisition of land or converting the roundabout to a signalized intersection. This assumption, though, is based upon today's traffic patterns and a standard growth rate. What can't be determined is how traffic patterns will change over time, how ride sharing or other forms of traffic will be used, or what vehicles will be on the road. The risk with a signalized intersection is that we see traffic backing up towards Highway 1 and causing delays to the main intersection that is controlled by Alberta Transportation. The report indicates that this is unlikely to happen, but again, we're basing this upon today's traffic patterns and a standard growth rate. Looking at the costs, which don't include the cost of borrowing or regular maintenance, such as crack sealing and snow clearing, the annual signal maintenance over a 20-year period is approximately $25,000. And although signals are quite robust, it should be anticipated that there will be need for an upgrade or major repair over that 20-year period. In comparison, the roundabout option does not have an additional annual maintenance, but is likely to need a full intersection upgrade, which is anticipated to cost upwards of $300,000. I'd also like to mention that Donna, our operations manager, reviewed both of these options and has no concerns in regards to regular maintenance with either option. When we look at traffic safety, we can see that a roundabout has significant advantages, and the number of diverging points is reduced, the number of merging points is reduced, and the crossing points are completely eliminated. In my report, I mentioned a comparative analysis completed by Greater Sudbury, and they noted that roundabouts see an overall reduction in collision of 48%, while injury and fatality collisions are reduced by 78%. With pedestrian safety, the conflict points are also reduced, but the greatest advantage is that pedestrians only have to look one way as they progress through each segment of the intersection. An example would be as you're crossing north, you first are only concerned about eastbound traffic until you get to the center refuge, where then pedestrian can reassess and judge their crossing based on westbound traffic. The Greater Sudbury report indicated that pedestrian collisions in a roundabout were reduced by approximately 50%. Alberta Transportation prefers roundabouts for many reasons, but one primary reason is the environmental impact. With cars waiting less by not having to stop at a red light, they are reducing their overall noise, pollution, and fuel consumption. Doing a cost-benefit analysis is another good way to compare projects. Alberta Transportation has a template which is available to everyone, and utilizing that spreadsheet, the following can be seen. Discounted benefits, or the top left there, which are the non-cash benefits of each project, shows a small 3% advantage to the roundabout option. Net present value, or the top right, takes all of the discounted benefits and all of the costs for the project, converts them back to 2021 dollars to provide an accurate comparison. Again, about a 3% advantage goes to the roundabout. Net present value to cost ratio, which is the bottom left, takes into account the net present value and relates it to the cost. With the lower capital and replacement cost of the traffic signal, the ratio leans in favor of the signal option. The same can be seen when we look at the bottom right, or the benefit cost ratio. The cost of replacement, anticipated at $300,000, is the driving factor in keeping the cost benefit analysis close. Without those costs included, the roundabout option would be ahead in all cases. The roundabout option does provide the opportunity to create a gateway into Strathmore and possibly a welcome feature. The options for this are endless, and of course the costs associated are also endless. The benefits to this cannot be measured and have not been included in any of the comparisons previous. Some examples, though, from areas throughout the world are to follow here. The one we have in Strathmore is in Wildflower Ranch. This one features a combination of landscaping and signage. It has been done in a way in which visibility is not really interrupted, yet all the desired amenities are included. Radium BC recently had one of the more extravagant options for such a project. They've got these large ram horns surrounding the radium sign. They're both very large, but they're also lit as a night feature. This example from Oregon shows a smaller art installation with more focus on landscaping. We can look at options for signage, where it's just a name, which this example comes from China. And then an alternative and likely less expensive option would be this one from Kitsap, Washington, which uses the landscape features as its signage. And then lastly, Sycamoose has recently installed an art feature in their main roundabout that also serves as directional signage. So it provides a combination of information while also improving the public realm. As noted, the options are endless, as is the cost associated, but the main item of note is that these options only exist with a roundabout. A signalized intersection is nothing more than a signalized intersection, and we have all seen hundreds of them. The benefits of the public realm are not measurable, cannot be included in a cost-benefit analysis. I hope that I haven't overloaded you with information tonight. I'd be happy to answer questions from councillors to help guide the decision on what direction the infrastructure should take when we move to the design stage for this intersection. Overall, the signalized option is the recommendation, but knowing there may be unmeasurable benefits to a roundabout, this is an item in which council should be involved. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Ethan. I'll turn now to council. Any questions for Ethan? Councillor Mitzner.
My concern is the close proximity to the main intersection. Like, you're coming off the number one and you're going to be right there. So would a roundabout not be better than another major intersection?
Your worship, through this chair to you, Councillor Mitzner, there is a very close proximity. Like I said, the traffic impact analysis indicates we shouldn't back up to Highway 1, but it's always a possibility. And the other thing that the TIA doesn't take into account is when those lights fail or in flashing 4 reds when they're not working properly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you very much, Ethan. I really appreciate the level of the depth of information you provided here. You almost sold me on the roundabout with just that presentation there. And I have a similar concern, I guess, to Councillor Mitzner, and that is just the proximity of the signalized intersection to the other signalized intersection, and not even necessarily coming off of Highway 1, which could potentially be a problem. The other problem is just even coming from, going south, and, if right now, sometimes you get to the intersection, and then there's you hope to catch the next lights, let's say. And so if you're going through 2 sets of red lights, right there, that could, kind of become, kind of a point of complaint almost. So honestly, I'm kind of really on the fence about I think that, you've made a lot of good points about, the costs and, and when the timeline that we'll need to kind of look at, redoing things. But I guess I'm kind of looking for maybe do you have I know you've recommended, we go with the signalized intersection, but yeah, I guess I'm looking for something maybe stronger, or because, like I said, I'm kind of, I really like the idea of the roundabout. Especially with the gateway. It could act as kind of a gateway to Strathmore. In a lot of ways, and and seeing what other communities have done with it, I think we could probably do something really cool with it. So I'm really on the fence at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm on the fence about this as well. Obviously, cost to the public is always something that we have to be cognizant of. But I like the idea of the roundabout for a few ways. One, like Deputy Mayor Montgomery outlined, is the idea of having that gateway to our downtown area. That is a way that many people, including myself, mainly access downtown, and it would be nice to have something more welcoming, greeting people as they enter. And I think that really aligns with our goals around revitalizing downtown and pumping some life in there. And then I also echo the concerns around traffic volume, especially around certain times of day. I'm thinking around, school bus pickup. I was picking up my niece over at one of the schools in that area today, and it's quite a crazy, kind of hectic area at that time of day. So I'm a little worried about backups there, and the environmental impact of having a roundabout versus a signalized intersection is something that's important to me too, and I think important to a lot of Strathmorites as we start to contemplate climate change and significant ways we can have an impact and focus our development with that in mind. And then finally, the reason why I'm on the side of the roundabout, or tend to be, is pedestrian safety. We have a lot of kids that use that intersection. High school kids go through there every day at lunch or are walking home. And I think any choice that we make, if there is an option to increase pedestrian safety, especially in a zone where we have so many children that will be utilizing that intersection, I think that's something that we really need to take into high consideration, and the roundabout wins in that category for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that when we did the signalized intersection by Co-op across from what used to be the Super 8, the distances are very active. So I think that having a signalized intersection, as Ethan has outlined, and the timing of those lights can work. We know that it can work. I can remember council having exactly these discussions, relevant to all the same things, the proximity to a school, access from the main highway. And so for my part, I live 2 blocks away from that area. And I also, of course, use that as the access point, very familiar with the traffic flows there. I think what administration is proposing is really, from a financial and from a safety perspective, the best possible choice at this time. If we were going to put money into a roundabout, I'd rather put it at the main intersection into town, at the intersection of 817 and number 1. So I am very much in favor of the proposal as it stands, Your Worship. However, if council wanted to look further and into the types of grants available and the potential for accessing those, and they wanted to take out the word signalized from the motion, and we have time to do that, then I would consider that. I would be open to consideration of that. But primarily, I am in favor of the proposal as it stands, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Wegener.
Again, thank you, Ethan, for your presentation. At the start of this, I was all for the signalized intersection. I do have one concern or one question about the deep utility upgrades. If we go with the roundabout, those repairs, those upgrades have to be done immediately. But you said, I believe you said that they weren't necessary for the signalized one, although we would probably do it. Was I correct on that?
Your Worship, and to you, Councillor Wagner, you are correct in what I said. So with the roundabout, we would be putting a large amount of concrete in the middle of the intersection, which is where those utilities currently exist. So we'd want to move everything out of that area so that if any future maintenance had to happen, it would all be within the roadway. With the signalized option, we're not disrupting the roadway much, and therefore those utilities don't have to move. Either way, this upgrade project for the sanitary system has to happen, and we're starting that design process this year regardless. It's just with the roundabout option, it would have to be done first. With the signalized option, it's probably preferred to be done first, but if for some reason we decided that it didn't make sense, we have that option.
Okay, that, I guess you kind of answered my second question. You're in the process of looking at that now. My second question was going to be, what is the life expectancy left on those utilities? Through you,
Mayor, the life expectancy, I think we still have some life expectancy. The issue that we're running into is capacity. That area of town is pretty much where the majority of our sewage comes in and goes into one main pipe going down to our wastewater treatment plant, and we're at capacity. So these upgrades are to increase that capacity. So it's not a matter of pipe lifespan, it's more a matter of future development.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wagner. Councillor Wiley?
I think I echo what a lot of you were saying. I figured we'd go into this and vote the signalized intersection. It would go over pretty smooth and we'd be done. But I keep going back to how beautiful the roundabout could look. I keep going back to the idea of that gateway. I have that image of coming in off the highway. As you know, I work at the school right there. Coming in toward the downtown, being welcomed by, it wouldn't even have to be an expensive sign. So that would be really super exciting for me. Here's the con, though, as I see it. If you go with a roundabout, that's the kind of thing that's different. And I could just see the people of Strathmore going, what did town council do now? What have they come up with? Like, what harebrained idea, roundabout? Like, who knows how to use these things? So I think that's a very real con. I can see people being upset, even though the research shows that the traffic accidents are actually reduced and it's safer for pedestrians. So all that's to say, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Before I go back to Councillor Langmaid, our new CAO, Councillor CAO Scoble, do you have any comments you'd like to throw in?
Yes, thank you. I thought I'd just add a few comments. Really good questions and discussion by council. I think Ethan and I had a discussion about this, and I think administration in general, we were all rooting for the roundabout. But administration is always going to put the best administrative recommendation forward. In this case, we came up with the traffic signalization, which is appropriate given the cost-benefit analysis work that was done in that. Of course, it's council's prerogative to, look at other factors that perhaps aren't under administration's purview, and that's some of the points you've been bringing up. I have had experience with some roundabouts in my last community that we've installed, and most of the comments you're bringing forward echo here. They're really good for moving traffic, right? A roundabout is really good at moving traffic. It's a safer traffic control mechanism, and it keeps traffic flowing is the main thing. In the longer term, we may have to also consider it. If you were to go the roundabout, you would want to do it probably at Archie Kleiber and Center as well, right? Because it would be kind of defy logic to the residents to have a device that moves traffic and then come to a four-way stop and perhaps a signal in the future. But the biggest thing I've seen is what was just mentioned is really public acceptance of it. You would really, not saying that should be a showstopper, but you would really, we'd really have to work with the public on awareness and understanding of the traffic circle and where they go. I think the big drawback that really drove the recommendation for signalization was the life cycle, but also expansion in the future. The roundabout can't be expanded without having to procure land, which is likely unavailable in this event. So, like I said, I think we were all rooting for the roundabout, and I have experience with them. They've been good, and they keep traffic moving, but there is a lot of public confusion and concern about it as well. So something to be aware of.
Thank you, CAO Scoble. I'll go back to Councillor Langmaid. Do you have another question, or were you thinking of putting a motion on the floor for discussion?
I have one more question, if I may, Your Worship.
Certainly.
Thank you. Ethan, you mentioned that there is a project already being, I can't remember the wording you used, but maybe scoped out for the deep utilities in that area. Anyways, could you please just maybe elaborate more on what the timeline for that project looks like? How, if we were to choose the roundabout, how much would we be pushing ahead that project to upgrade those utilities?
Your Worship, to you, Councillor Langmaid, the schedule for those utilities within the capital plan right now is to design them in 2022 and then construct them in 2023. We were going to look at whether a phased approach to that project would make sense or not, focusing more on the Highway 1 area 1 year, and then once we're kind of out of the main area of town, do that another year, just to help with construction scheduling. So essentially, those utilities at the moment are scheduled for next year. The development, which is kind of driving this intersection upgrade, is tentatively scheduled to open next year as well. So right now they're kind of aligning very well. I would say if we went the roundabout option, we would probably be delaying by a couple of months more than anything, but that would be about it. I think at the moment things are lining up quite well. As long as, you know, unforeseen items don't happen or development doesn't happen overnight, which we don't expect it to.
Thank you. So just to make sure that I've understood everything perfectly, no matter which option we choose, the roundabout or the signalized intersection, those deep utilities will be upgraded in the next two years-ish.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley, and then Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
I'm not ready with the motion yet. I have a question for Ethan. I know it was in the information package we were given, but could you explain to me how a semi-truck comes around that roundabout? I know that that's one of the big traffic items on that road.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the roundabout would have two circles within it. And I'm pretty sure that you've seen the one at Wildflower, where it's got that inner circle with the landscape and then the one around it that's made out of concrete. That concrete one is meant for larger vehicles to drive on. So generally a typical passenger vehicle stays on the asphalt lane, but a larger vehicle, the truck stays on the asphalt lane, but it's expected that the trailer hops up onto that concrete circle, and that allows them to get their proper turning radius without, you know, driving over curbs or onto sidewalks or those sort of things. So each option has the ability for semis without issue. I think with the roundabout option, it might look improper to people who aren't eligible, but it's the way it is designed.
So a follow-up then, this isn't for a semi-truck driver, licensed, experienced, they come to this intersection, they're not cursing us out, right? This is a normal thing for them. I'm really revealing the fact I'm from Strathmore here, these roundabouts, but that's normal for them. They're not gonna, what the heck?
I think the key word you used was experienced.
Yeah.
I think the majority of experienced drivers would not have an issue with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. Question for administration. As far as like a timeline goes for this decision, what is kind of the deadline for a decision?
Your Worship, through the chair to you, Councillor. The hope is to get a decision tonight. I'm not saying we have to, but right now we're basically in a holding pattern on the design of this intersection. And until we know which way to go, we won't continue design. We don't want to spend funds unnecessarily. The decision on this one, of course, will affect the deep utilities design, which isn't planned to go to tender for another week or two. So we've got, you know, a month or two on the deep utility design, but as far as the actual intersection design, nothing will proceed until this decision is made.
So one concern I have is just like because you guys are anticipating a lot more traffic is going to flow out of that shopping area presumably, and presumably head north or east or maybe even west a bit. And then I'm kind of thinking about as semis come off the highway even now, they stop at that four-way. Sometimes they're kind of sitting across several lanes of traffic, waiting to turn left. And I'm just thinking about how that could be alleviated, with a traffic circle if they're just kind of hanging to the right, and kind of traveling around that way. So was there any edge at all given to either as far as traffic flow? I think you said that the traffic circle basically would flow traffic a bit better.
Your worship, and to you, Councillor, definitely the traffic circle would flow traffic better. There's no question about that. When I completed that cost benefit analysis, the template provided by the province, what I'm able to do in there is adjust the number of vehicles anticipated for each type. So it takes into account the number of semis versus passenger vehicles versus other types of vehicles. So when it was looking at those discounted benefits or those benefits that take into account non-cost items, it was taking into account the quantity of larger vehicles that we expect and their environmental benefit, their wait times, their value of their time by not waiting. So I think when we look at the discounted benefits and the net present value favoring the roundabout, that's just more support that it is better even for those vehicles.
Okay. And with lights, I guess, in that kind of close proximity, would those be coordinated at all so that, or would they just be kind of independent of each other?
Yeah, your worship, and to you, Councillor, definitely they would have to be coordinated. When we talked to Alberta Transportation about this project, of course, they were in favor of the roundabout too, because they would prefer to see that everywhere. But understanding our constraints and the potential that it would need to be upgraded in the future, their main thing is make sure that it's coordinated with the Highway 1 so that interruptions to Highway 1 are limited or reduced completely.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Ethan. I really appreciate all the info.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll go to Councillor Peterson and Councillor Mitzner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ethan, could you encapsulate the cost differential between the two proposals? Just because I know people are going to revisit this again and come back and look at this, our public will. I was wondering if you could just quickly talk about the difference in the cost between the two.
If I can find that page, yes. So your worship, and you, Councillor Peterson, the cost difference between the two is about $20,000 when we just look at the road construction, the sidewalk construction, or the cost of signals to be included. So when we're looking at simply traffic impacts, the costs are very comparable, almost identical. What I've noted in here and what I do want to caution council on is that the roundabout option and the costs associated with landscaping or an entrance feature or anything like that have not been included.
Right.
And our consultant within the sedulous report threw in a lump sum of 75,000, just kind of as an allowance for landscaping. And I think 75,000 would get us a well landscaped roundabout, but it wouldn't get us anything in terms of signage or entrance feature or that sort of thing. So if that's the direction that council wants to go, I think it should be known that the cost for that item could quickly come to equal the cost of the road construction. So depending on how elaborate you want to get, those costs will quickly increase.
So Ethan, when I look at the information that you've provided and I look at the cost differential and the landscaping costs, the potential landscaping costs that Sedulous gave to us, and then if we have to do a bit of a jump in terms of the deep servicing, we're probably looking at least in that $150,000, $175,000 range conservatively.
Conservatively, absolutely.
So then that's I'm hearing Mel's voice now. that's a 1.75% increase in taxes. And so I think that that's something we really have to be mindful of going forward. And again, I really thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you. Councillor Mitzner.
I think the roundabouts are the new age, and for traffic flow patterns, it's in our best interest. It would welcome an upgrade to our community. And there's more than one way in and out of Strathmore, and there's more than one Tim Hortons. So the grief we're going to get from some of the citizens, they'll just choose not to travel that corner. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Is anyone ready to put a motion on the floor and we can then discuss? Councillor Wagoner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that council direct administration to continue with the signalized intersection design for Lakeside Boulevard and Archie Kleiber Trail intersection.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor now, and I haven't said anything. I was impressed with Councillor Peterson's comments. It's a very similar intersection to the one by the Husky at the Trans-Canada on 817. I love the idea of a roundabout, but I also agree with Councillor Wiley. There's going to be an explosion and an uproar if we put one there. I do love the fact that it could very well have really nice signage and aesthetics as far as coming off the highway, but I'm leaning definitely towards the recommendation from Ethan and his staff. I did see an amazing one on the way to Prescott, Arizona, and it was just beautiful. They had a sculpted cowboy on a horse. It was in bronze. It was gorgeous, but it was much more open, and I'm definitely leaning towards the recommendation. Councillor Wiley.
I don't know if I've been so torn yet. This is a tough one. Okay, so but some of the pros of the roundabout include pedestrian safety. And you're thinking about the kids coming out of school, but don't forget that intersection gets used by truckers who park there, and they'd be walking across the street to use for example, if there's a Wendy's in there. The homeless population uses that intersection. Sometimes I walk to school through that way, and another major group is you see young kids in their clerk's outfit heading off to McDonald's or Canadian Tire. Like, that intersection is very, very heavily used. So for pedestrian safety, for traffic flow, and beauty, city beautification is something that's really near and dear to my heart. So I don't know, I'm really torn. And obviously cost and public opinion are things that really matter too. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Any other comments in the discussion phase? Councillor Langmaid?
A couple of extra considerations. Well, I certainly appreciate that the intersection on 817 has similar qualities in proximity to a school and in the highway, but I think my concern is more the demographic of children in that area is different. And that is very close to an elementary school where students aren't leaving campus during the day at lunchtimes to go get meals, especially at, say, fast food restaurants that are across the highway. So that's why specifically in this case I'm leaning towards the pedestrian safety of a traffic circle. And as for the costs for the beautification of the traffic circle, I think that there's, that's not something that we're deciding on today, what's going to go in that traffic circle or how much we're going to spend on that. And I think that there's opportunities to phase that work. That's not something that we necessarily need to spend a bunch of money on today, or the moment that we build this traffic circle. If that's something that we want to start in a smaller way and then eventually add on to it with, maybe a feature, a sculptural feature or whatnot, we could do that at a future date and decide that then. Thank you. Those are my final thoughts on this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan, I have a question just before I go to Councillor Peterson. The fact that a roundabout might have better flow of traffic and you have a big truck coming off the Trans-Canada, wouldn't that better flow of traffic possibly result in less safety for pedestrians crossing? How do they determine when to cross the road? Would there be signalization for them to walk? It's a flowing kind of a roundabout, is it not?
You are correct, Your Worship. The benefit for a roundabout in terms of pedestrian crossing is they only need to look one direction.
Yeah.
So when you're only focused on one set of one traffic movement rather than two, you're able to cross kind of halfway across the street and then reevaluate before you continue again to the other side. So that's where the benefit from pedestrian comes. Typically, there's not any lights or crossing because that would, go against the idea of a roundabout. But yeah, the ability to cross halfway and only evaluate one is the benefit for a roundabout.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in the institution of the 817 and Highway 1, or the traffic proximity there and those lights, when that happened, the storefront school was there, and also the virtual school, and there were that was open 12 hours a day. That school site was open 12 hours a day to 250 plus junior and senior high school students. And it was a very serious consideration as well when that was developed. And the signaling that is on that corner has been very, very sufficient. And there's a lot more movement on that particular signaling corner, I think, than there would be on the signaling corner that we are anticipating in this motion. And so where I see the majority of the movement, I live across the street from the school, where I see the majority of the movement is actually on 6th Avenue and Lakeside Boulevard. And that's where we have the crossing signal for the students going across to Kinsman Park. And so that there's a huge amount of student traffic on that corner. And so having signaling on the south side of that, I think would probably advance the safety of children, although that hasn't been proven through hasn't been addressed in this report that's been presented to council. So I just think that is a consideration. I think that the signaling would provide the amount of safety necessary for the amount of foot traffic that I see every day on that corner. But I do think that the cost is an enormous consideration. We need to be incredibly careful around cost as we move forward. We know what we're facing in terms of the immediacy of our budget. We certainly don't know what we're facing with the continued outfall of this last wave and the impact that it's going to have on our current economy. And so I think that cost for me drives my decision. Safety for sure. I think Ethan has covered that, and I'm content with a signalized process that has been chosen. But the cost is not acceptable for me at this point. And if we ever did decide that once those services were put in and the deep ground services were put in, if we decide in future years that we want to go to roundabouts at Center Street and Archie Clyber Trail and that intersection, the one we're discussing today, and the one on 817 and Wheatland Trail, I think we'd be well served to do that sometime in the future when we are better situated economically. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, this is going to be an interesting vote. I have no idea where we're going to end up. So is everyone comfortable with me calling the question? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion put on the floor by Councillor Wagoner? All in favor? And opposed? And I'm not seeing the last vote. Councillor Wiley, what did you vote?
I'm going to support Denise. I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay, so I believe we have a 4-3 vote in favor of the signalization recommendation from staff and administration. Thank you for the excellent discussion and comments, everyone. And that brings us to item 8.2. And this is the motion to discuss or to have those meeting dates be held virtually. I think you'll see it in your script if someone is prepared to put a motion on the floor. Mark, are you still with us? Councillor Peterson.
I apologize, Your Worship, for living out. I would move that council reschedule the January 19th, 2022 regular council meeting and January 26th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting to be held virtually.
Thank you for the motion. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And that brings us to committee reports 9.1 Wheatland Housing Management Body Building Committee minutes from December 13th. I believe you all have it in your agenda package. Are you speaking to the minutes, Councillor Peterson?
If I just might speak generally to the Wheatland Housing Management Body, I think that there will be other minutes from that body coming forward. But if Councillor Wagner, I'm sure, can speak more eloquently than me to anything that in terms of the building committee, what I wanted to address, Your Worship, was a matter that was brought to my attention from our CAO, Vicky Cook. And this was with regards to a concern that was brought forward at Wheatland County Council that has brought a lot of questions to me as a member of Wheatland Housing. And it was just with regards to whether or not Councillor Wagner made a motion at the last meeting of the Wheatland Housing Management Body that all board members would be vaccinated and would follow the vaccination policy as per management set out for that. And there was a question at the county meeting as to whether we had the right to mandate the vaccine policy. And so I just wanted to make sure that people knew that in due diligence, CAO of Wheatland Housing Management Body, Vicky Cook, sought information from Philip Henke, who is the housing management body coordinator for the province, and he assured us that that indeed it is okay. And what he said was that under the Alberta Housing Act, Section 6, the management body is a corporation and has the capacity, rights, powers, and privileges of a natural person, and that includes the ability to develop operational policies that provide guidance for the day-to-day operations, which then supports the motion that Councillor Wagner put forward. So just if people had questions, we wanted to really make sure that they understood that the body, Wheatland Housing Management Body, was within their judicial rights, or that in order to make that motion and to see it through. And that's all I had, Your Worship. Thank you for allowing me that.
Thank you. And Kara, do we need a motion to accept the report as information? No? Okay, thank you. So then we move on to item 10, items directly related to council. 11, we have nothing there. Item 11.1, bylaw 21-21, Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan, which is on page 70. And we're looking for a motion for first reading and then to direct it to a public hearing. But that public hearing needs to be mentioned as far as being held virtually. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-21, being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan, and that council direct administration to schedule a virtual public hearing for bylaw number 21-21 for February 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. via an online web app like Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, just a quick question to you. Are you clear with that motion? Are we good?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think that motion suffices.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have Councillor Langmaid's motion on the floor for those things, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no urgent business tonight. And item 13, questions between councillors and/or council statements. And I'm not seeing any hands up. I believe we're not doing administrative inquiries, but it's still here. Is that correct, Karen? I see you nodding. I don't believe we have anything in camera, so all we need is a motion to adjourn. Mark's hand is up, and it never gets old, and it's even good virtually. Councillor Langmaid.
I move that council adjourn the January 12th, 2022 regular council meeting at 6:54 p.m.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the public at home for tuning